Hello everyone, and welcome to our third episode in our PowerShell series. As we continue through this series, the commands and the scripts that we use are going to be getting more and more advanced. So before we continue, I would like to educate you all on the PowerShell help system. Now, in order to learn this help system, you need to know three core CMDlets, and that is what I'll be introducing you today. Now, it is my desire to make you all more proficient in PowerShell, and these core CMDlets are very much going to help you. Now, let's discuss about the PowerShell help system a bit. So, a big difference between what makes someone skilled versus a beginner in PowerShell is their ability to navigate and use the built-in commands in PowerShell. Now, the help system is going to assist you in this, and that it's going to really help you learn how to find these commands, learn about these commands, and how to use them. So experts probably don't have every command memorized, but you don't need to when you know how to navigate the complex PowerShell system. And the three core CMDlets are going to help you, especially if you're a beginner, as often beginners struggle finding answers regarding how to find commands and how to use them. So in order to set you up for the more advanced PowerShell techniques, these CMDlets are really going to let you take full advantage of the PowerShell system. Now let's talk about these core CMDlets. So what are these CMDlets? Well, there's three main ones, and it's going to be get help, get command, and get member. Now, at times this is what differentiates someone who's skilled or proficient in PowerShell from someone who's a beginner. Is a beginner may not know how to use these tools. And like I mentioned, you don't need to know every command in order to make full use of the PowerShell system as long as you know how to use the help system. So let's talk about these commands a little bit. First, I'll mention the get command. What does the get command do? Well, it gets all the commands installed on your computer, including CMDlets, aliases, functions, filters, scripts, and applications. So it's crucial for discovering what commands are available to you. The next one I'll mention is the get help, which is used to display information about a CMDlet, function, and workflows, providers, aliases, and scripts. So both of these can be used together to learn about commands, and uh, essentially, like, get command can be used to discover commands, and get help can be used to explore those commands uses. Now finally, we have the get member CMDlet, and this is a little bit more advanced than the other two to use, in that it provides information about the object that the CMDlet returns. Don't worry if that doesn't make a lot of sense to you right now, because we're going to be going over it, and I'll be showing an example here in a few moments. So essentially, it just allows you to see the properties and methods of an object. And we'll leave it at that for now. So first, I want to demonstrate to you the get help command, as it will display some useful information regarding the commands we're going over. So let me go ahead and type get help. Now, as you can see, we have some results here, and it goes over some information. I'll help you understand this. As we scroll up, we'll go back to the top. Now, as it mentions, using this command enables you to use the Windows PowerShell help system. We even mentioned this before. It displays help about Windows PowerShell CMDlets and concepts. So the concepts are more if you use, and we'll scroll down here, it does have some more information, but if you use update help, and as it mentions here, you're going to want to be signed in as an administrator, you'll be able to use the update help command, and it's going to install files on your computer locally. So when you use get help, it's going to give you some detailed information and help you understand use cases for a command, information about that command, and it's just very useful to have that on your local computer in case you don't have internet connection, or so on. So but what we're going to be using today is this, and that's the get help CMDlet name, which is the parameter hyphen online. So this is going to pull up some information in the browser directly from the Microsoft website, and I'm going to walk you through some of this information, and we're going to do that together so you can understand where to get some learning resources if you're stuck, confused, or just trying to learn more on your own when you're exploring. So let's go ahead. We're going to scroll down, and it does have some more information up here, but we're not going to be going over every detail for each command here. So something we can do also is get help, and we can use it on itself. So let's go ahead and try that here. Now, as you can see, we have the name. Get help displays the name of the command. Then we have a lot of information here, such as, for example, well, if you look here, you can see, you can do different modifications on the parameters, but we're not going to be going into all these details here. What I'd like you to note, though, is that there is no alias for this command, which means every time you type get help, you need to type it out the full way, which is get help. So let's go ahead and explore, for example, some of the other commands that we mentioned. Here we're going to explore get command. So let's try it. Get help, get command. Now these are already 2 of the core Cmdlets, so we're making a lot of progress. Now let's see, it says this is the name of the command, which was clear, that's what we typed. And here we have some more parameters, but we're not going to worry about that on this episode. I would like you to notice though that there's an alias here. So this is shorthand. So let me show you an example. If I use get help GCM, let me ask you a question. What do you think this is going to do here? Well, I've mentioned aliases prior in a video, and an alias is essentially exactly, it's just a cover up for something else. So in this case, GCM is get command. If you typed GCM in your prompt, it's going to give the same result as get command. So let's give it a try. Get help GCM. And as you can see, we've gotten the same result. It has the name get command, even though that's not what we typed. We typed the alias for it, or the shorthand. And it has the same parameters from earlier, and it also shows what the alias is, even though that's what we used. So as we're going through these commands, we're going to start using the aliases because it can save you time. And when you're writing scripts, and when you're looking through scripts, maybe on GitHub, for example, you're going to want to be able to read the shorthand in case that's what people are using. So before we continue, let's go ahead and clear the window, just to clear up some space. Now, I want to show you what I mentioned before, which is the -online parameter in addition to using get help. So in this case, we're going to use get help, and we're going to use the shorthand for get command, which is GCM online. And if you wanted, you could type get command here, but we're going to use the shorthand more frequently. I'm going to hit enter. Now you can't see it in my current window, but I'm going to go ahead and pull it up for you. Now as we can see, we have our window here, and this got pulled up in the browser once I used that command with the online parameter. And we can see it goes over a lot of information. So this is essentially documentation on PowerShell. We can see version 5.1, which is the current version we're running, is available. And here are some other versions, and you can notice we're not on the long-term support version currently. That's okay, we're just doing this for demonstration purposes. Now if you look, we can see all the parameters, and this is what would come up if you used get help on get command in PowerShell. So we can scroll down, and the reason this is so useful is I'm about to show you here. It gives more information in the description, gives use cases. If we scroll down, examples, it shows, for example, this is what we said the command does is it gets the cmdlets, functions, aliases, and so on. And we're going to use that command here in our prompt in a moment. But I'd also like to continue showing a few more of the examples so we could see, we're not going to be doing each example here, but get commands in the current session, get cmdlets and display them in order, and there's a whole host of things here. Right here, this is a pipe character, and we're going to be going more over that shortly for what it does. And you could just keep scrolling down, and they have example after example, and some of them even get a little complex, like right here. We're not going to get to that level of complexity in this episode, but we will down the line. And that's why these Core Cmdlets are so helpful, because they'll teach you everything you need to know to be able to do these sort of things. So let's go ahead and we're going to head back. I'm going to close the browser temporarily. And now we can see the prompt once again. So before I continue, we're going to hit clear. And now we can see it's been cleared. And I'm going to go ahead and show you an example use of git command. So let's type out the full thing here. Git command. And we're going to have a lot of results here. That can sometimes be intimidating for beginners. But don't you worry, I'm going to show you some ways to make it simpler. And just real quick as an example, I'm going to show you the shorthand just to prove once again that GCM is an alias for git command. If we type that here, we're going to get the same result. So you really could use whichever you prefer. And we'll be using the shorthand more often here. So we're going to clear again. And now there's a whole assortment of commands. And you could look through them yourself if you would like. But I'm interested in a particular command today. And that is, we'll type git command. And then we're going to do git. And you know, if I hit tab here, as you can see, it pulls up a we got like some output, which is this command here. And if we hit tab again, we get another command. And honestly, you could even hold it down and it lets you autocomplete and scroll through the whole list of commands. Now, I do have a command particularly in mind for this episode that I'd like to pull up, and it's the service command. Let me go ahead and type ser, and then when I hit tab, it auto-completed the service. So you can see here that you don't even need to have to browse through the whole thing. You can just type the noun-verb pairs, and the command will get pulled up. So let's go ahead and hit enter here. And now we can see that this command type is a cmdlet. Like we mentioned, it will show aliases, etc. And this is the name of the command that we typed in, the version, the source library for it. So all very useful stuff. Now let's explore a little bit more about git service with git help. We're going to do git help, git service. Alright, well we can see like the name, the parameters, and the shorthand. So we used git command to get git service. Now let's try git service. We'll use the shorthand this time. As you can see, we get some useful information. Now these are services that are currently on my Windows 10 home. So you know, we could see here, and it mentions like whether they're stopped, running, etc. You know, so here we could see the Xbox services, which typically are with Windows, as Xbox and Windows are very compatible. And you know, Windows subsystem for Linux, I used that in the Linux episode. If we scroll up, we see some other things, you know. Hyper-V is used for virtual machines. And we can see that the services are stopped here, but you know, you can basically see a whole list of services on your computer. So it's very useful. And we could always use the hyphen online with the git help, so like this. And this is the git service shorthand, hyphen online. And it'll pull it up in our window on our browser, but we're not going to do that right now. Let's go ahead and clear. Now, the next thing I would like to do is show you git help, git member. Now, as I mentioned, git member is a little bit more complex than the other two Core Cmdlets. We've already found how git help can give us some very useful information, and we also learned how git command shows us all the commands accessible on our system, and how we could even quickly potentially sort through various commands using auto-completion. And there are other ways to sort through them as well, but we're going to keep things simple here. We're going to go to the next Core Cmdlet, and that's git member. So do git help, git member. As you can see, we see some more information here. We see the name, the parameters, and we see GM, which is short for git member. So let me go ahead and do git help, git member, and we're going to look at some of the online documentation, because I would like to explicitly show you some more information about it, since this is a little bit more complex than the other two. So let me go ahead and pull it up here. Alrighty, and here we can see the git member documentation. So as we can see, that's the module, it's a part of the reference, etc. And like I mentioned, this is all on the Microsoft Learn website. It's very useful for educational purposes. Even outside of PowerShell, you can learn about C#, .NET, and a whole host of other services provided by Microsoft. So let's go ahead and scroll down here. And it says it gets the members, the properties, and methods of objects. Now, that's what we mentioned before. But let's read a little further. We have to specify the object, and we use the input object parameter or pipe in order to get an object to the member. So we saw a pipe earlier. Now we'll go ahead and scroll down and look at some examples. Now here we can see the pipe. So the output of get service is being piped, and it's being piped into the get member. And that's what this pipe means. And let me be explicit I know I just said it gets piped into it. So on the left side of the pipe, something gets outputted. And in this case, it's the output of get service, which we demonstrated earlier. Now, on the right side of the pipe, the output from the left side gets inputted into the right side, which is basically means that the output of get service is the input of get member. And it's that simple. And we're going to be using that in example here in a few moments. So let me go ahead and close out the browser. Alright, and here we are back in the command prompt. And we're gonna, we could learn get member right now, but I'm gonna put it off just for another second. Instead, let's look at another command. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you a new command once again. We're gonna use get command. And you could use the shorthand for it. I just typed it out here. We're going to use get command get process. And look, this will ensure that this cmdlet is on your current system, because I'm about to use it here in this example coming up. So let's go ahead and clear the window. Now, if we use get help, it should be GPS for get process. That should be the shorthand for it. And as we can see, there's another alias. So sometimes they have multiple aliases. So we could use GPS or PS as an alias for get process. And we see the name and some parameters. But let's not worry about that right now. I'm going to go ahead and clear this up. But remember this shorthand right here. I'm about to use that. So we'll do GPS. And look at that. We have a whole list of processes that we're currently running on the system. So with get command, I have shown you that we could ensure that a command is on our system. We can use get help to learn about the parameters of that command. Now, get service lists the services, whether they're running or stopped, and get process lists the current processes on the machine. So let's go ahead and clear here. Now let's do get process, and we'll do, for example, the system process. Here I'll hit tab. And look at that, it came up. You could keep hitting tab. Looks like there's only two options here. And look at that, we could see our system process has the ID 4. So this is a little unrelated to PowerShell in the instance that it doesn't have to do with the PowerShell command, but it does have to do with your local machine. All processes on your machine will have a process ID. And we're actually going to be using the process ID later in an example when I show you how to use get member and some commands associated with that. So let's go ahead. We're going to hit clear. Now let's use get process system get. Let me put a space here. Get member. And you could do GM here. We're going to be doing that more here shortly. And look, there's quite a bit of output. So what are we looking at here? Well, if you look, get member, as we mentioned, it gets information about the member. In this case, it's the system process. And you can tell it's a process. It says right here, it says it's a process, system diagnostics process. It comes from that library. And we see member type, alias property, event, method, and we scroll down, property. So as we mentioned, get member gets things like the methods or the properties of an object. And in this case, the object is the system process. And you could do this, for example, with other things. So, but we're going to use the example PowerShell here because, funnily enough, that's just what we're using. So we're going to use it as in an educational instance. So, as you can see, every object in PowerShell is going to have, some properties or some methods. So as you can see, we got some methods here. Now let me go ahead and clear. And I'm going to show you the process for PowerShell. So we're going to go ahead and do GPS. We're going to hit PO tab. It auto-completed to PowerShell. Now I just know PowerShell is a process that's running on our machine because we're using PowerShell right now. So let's go ahead and see what the process ID is. Enter. We see some information. We have PowerShell, and we have the ID, which is 17520. So this is useful information when you're managing processes, and we're actually going to manage a process here in PowerShell. So I would like to show you another thing. We're going to do GPS PowerShell, and then we're going to pipe it into the Git member, which when in shorthand is going to be GM. And if you look, we got a bunch of results here. Now if you use git help, git member, you're going to see that there's a special parameter, and I'll show you here. We're going to do git help GM. And this is member type. Now if you look, it looks like it extends all the way down, see, to right here. And these are all the member types. So it could be method, code method, properties, these are just examples, like event. Like we've seen all of these when we're using the git member. When we pipe a result into the git member, we see these. So if we do this, we're going to do git process PowerShell, and then we're going to input that process into git member. And now we're going to add a parameter to the git member. We're going to use the member type, which we can see is here. And we're going to input method, because we're going to use a method here in today's demonstration. So we'll do git member type method. That's essentially what that is saying on the right hand side of the pipe. So we'll hit enter. And look at that, it's a lot more readable. And we can see the member type is only methods here. So how are we going to use this? Because I wanted to demonstrate to you how we can use the output from git member. Because git member is a little bit abstract here. And it doesn't make as much sense as how we can use it as git help or git command. Well, like I mentioned, in this episode, I'm going to finish it off by demonstrating how we can use PowerShell methods. In this case, these are the methods because we selected the member type as a parameter, so it only gave us methods. So these are all the methods associated with PowerShell. And as you notice, it still has the system diagnostics process, just like the system did, because we're getting this from the process, git process, which is GPS. So in particular, I'm going to show you one of these methods, and we're going to use the kill method today. And this is going to be good for educational purposes. And I mentioned before the process ID. Each process has its own ID. We're going to use the process ID, and we're going to kill a process by specifying that ID. So we know that the PowerShell process contains a method for killing the process. And killing a process will terminate it. And in some cases, this can cause a loss of data. So I would recommend caution when you're terminating a process, especially if you don't know what it is or what it's doing. But in this case, we're familiar with PowerShell. I'm running it right now, and I'm actually not going to terminate the PowerShell process that we're currently using. Instead, I'm going to show you how to terminate a new PowerShell process. So let me go ahead and show you exactly what I'm explaining here. So there are two ways to terminate a PowerShell process in our instance, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. So let me go ahead and do git process PowerShell once again. And notice there's only one process right here, and we get information about this individual process, such as its process ID. Now let's hit clear. So if I type PowerShell in our prompt, it's going to start a new PowerShell process. Let's go ahead and give this a try. And look at that, we got some information here. It looks like it has started up a new terminal. But how do we know that there's more than one process running here? Well, let's go ahead and type git process, and we're going to look at the PowerShell processes. And look at that, this is certainly different than before. We can see two processes now. So one of these processes is running in the background, and it's likely going to be whichever one is using less the CPU. So let's go ahead and we're going to remove a process here, or we're going to kill it. So let me go ahead and hit up a couple times. So we can see in the git process PowerShell, we piped it into the git member, and we selected it, we filtered it by using the member type method. So as we can see, we have the kill process right here. And this is a function that the process has which allows you to kill a process. And here we're actually going to be using that. So let me show you exactly how we're going to do that. We're going to clear. We're going to get process for PowerShell, or get the processes for PowerShell. And we see these two. Now I'm going to use a special command here. And you can use this too, but like I said, I recommend caution. So we can get the process. And here we can use the ID of the process as a parameter. So I'm going to use -ID, and I'm going to close this here. But this isn't finished. Right here, we're going to be typing the ID number. So we're getting the process, and we're grabbing the process by the process ID. That's what we're doing here. And we're going to type the process ID explicitly so we can tell the system what process we want to kill here. So let's go ahead and pass the ID as a parameter. So when we get process by the ID, we can do, for example, we're going to do 1612. So right here, we're passing this process by its ID into this. And let me show you here exactly what we're saying. So let's do -ID 1612. And look, it pulled up that process. So currently we're referring to this process. It's pulling it. So let's go ahead. I'm going to add the parentheses like we did before. Now, when we add the parentheses like this, we can almost refer to it like an object, and we can call its function, and this is a little more advanced. We're going to be going over more use cases in future episodes. I'm just trying to show you how we can use the git member here. So we'll do .kill parentheses. So what are we doing here? So we're calling or grabbing the process by its ID, and we're using it as an object, and we use git member to figure out that it has the kill method. So we're getting this process by its ID, and we're killing it with the method that's built in to that process. So let's give it a try here. Alright, well, what just happened? We didn't get any output. Let me show you something. Now if we do git process PowerShell, notice there's only one process running, and that's here. So what can we take away from this? We initiated a process by typing PowerShell in our prompt, and it initiated a second process. We then used this command, we grabbed it by the process ID, and we called this method in order to terminate that process. So it's a little complex, but let me show you a more better example perhaps of what this would look like. So I'm going to do something here. We're going to clear. And this will be the final example, and then I'll let you guys go today. We're going to hit the plus. And look at that. As you can see, it's opened a new PowerShell. Well, before when we typed PowerShell, there was only one PowerShell process, and that was the one that we're running in this current window. But now we have two processes open for PowerShell. Let me show you. Get process PowerShell. And look at that. We're back to two processes once again. Now, one process is this window, and the other process is this window. Now, we're going to run that same command that we just ran. Looks like it's not coming up, so I'm going to go ahead and type it out. So we're getting the process by the ID, and the ID is going to be 13564. That's the process ID. And now we're going to kill that process with this method. So here we're really learning what the get member is capable of. It teaches us about the methods and the properties of objects, and in this case the object is this PowerShell process. And objects are also abstract. We're going to be going over more of those in future episodes. Let's go ahead and hit enter here. Now you see this come up. Termination behavior can be configured in advanced profile settings. That's Windows terminal specific. Let's not worry about that. We're just going to hit X here. But notice we're still running. Let's hit GPS PowerShell to check the process. And there's only one running. So what am I showing you here? Well, let's go to the other window. And look at that. It says process has been exited with code. And then it lists a code, and then it lists a code in hexadecimal format. So we terminated this process from the other window. So this is just showing you, for example, if you had Notepad, you could grab Notepad from the process. Like you could get the process, get Notepad, and then run Notepad as with the parameter of its ID and kill that process as well, because it's also an object. So there are so many different kinds of objects in PowerShell. And when we write these scripts, these are what we're going to be manipulating. We're going to be writing scripts to manipulate objects and the environment in PowerShell. And like I have said before, we're really only scratching the surface. As I showed, this is a second way to confirm that we're terminating the process. So get help, get command, and get member. Learn how to use them and use them efficiently, and it's really going to take your skills to the next level in terms of learning the commands available, learning what they're capable of, and we're going to be writing scripts that affect the properties and use the methods of the objects, and we're going to learn what these properties and methods are through get member. So each three of these cmdlets are core cmdlets. And this is why, because they're really going to enable us to develop a workflow and interact with objects in the system, whether they're processes, whether they're services, and so on. So I'm very excited to continue to learn these new commands and use them in scripts with you guys in these upcoming episodes. Now, like I mentioned, this is advanced usage of some of these features, and we're going to be going over more and more as we continue. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. And now that we learned the core cmdlets, we're really going to start learning how to create scripts to interact with these commands as we learn them. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next episode.